Yesterday, I made my predictions for UFC 314, which takes place this Saturday in Miami. But I thought I wanted to go through the biggest stories leading into UFC 314 and potentially what could happen with them after UFC 314. Starting off with Marco Trujillo. This is more crazy than having to do with what will happen in his future. He was what he nearly got robbed. I should have wrote on his way to Miami with Norma Dumont. If you guys didn't see the video, somebody came up to them when they were in a Uber or taxi, smashed the window, tried taking Marco Tulio's phone, didn't. He's fine. Norman Dumont is fine, and he's on a 9 fight win streak, and he's looked incredible in every fight he's been in. And I believe that he will be a nightmare matchup for most of the middleweights. Middleweight now is, I would argue, better than it has ever been. When Israel Adesanya was champion, I would have said that was one of the weakest middleweight divisions we've seen. But you look at it now, you got Whitaker, you got Shamaev, you got Keo Barala, Israel Adesanya, and of course, Dricus Duplessis. And I believe Marco Tulio with a impressive performance puts his name in the hat for a guy that in the next 5, 10 years will be a problem for the middleweights in the UFC. Moving on to our next fighter, we got Sumaderji. This is an interesting one. He was a monster in the WLF. He went 13-2, 11 KOs, one submission, one fight by decision. But he hasn't panned out in the UFC. He's 3-4. Um, he's had some tough fights, but I believe if he does rebound, he could be a fun addition to the flyweight division. This guy is a knockout artist at flyweight, and like we look at what Kai Kara France is able to do. This guy had a lot of insane knockouts in his run at WLF. And I think that if Sumaderji can pull through, he can really be a fun fighter around, the top 15, top 10. I have my questions of him fighting the best in the flyweight division. But I think once again, he is a really fun fighter that I would love the UFC to be able to keep around if he can perform. Moving on to our next fighter, Michael Electric. He's on a 3 fight losing streak, all by first round finish. But you look at who it's to, Shara Magomedov, Kevin Holland, Michelle Pereira, however you say his name. I can never say it right. But he is still an elite level fighter against mid fighters. He has a lot of knockouts, he has a lot of submissions, a lot of dominant victories. And maybe, those 3 fights were a fluke and he can rebound. If he doesn't, though, I I think he'll have one more fight in the UFC. And if he loses that one, then I think they cut him. I don't think you cut him off of these losses. These are really dangerous fighters, and I would love the UFC to keep Alexiak. I really think he is an elite fighter. He just needs to show that he can hang with the top fighters in the division. Moving on to our next fighter, we got Dominic Reyes. Dominic Reyes, man, what can you say? What a matter of a few years makes. Now, his rebound in his career with what would be a 3 fight win streak with a win over Krylov. Krylov hasn't been active, I believe. Krylov hasn't fought since either last year or even 2023. And this could be his last run. He's 35 years old. We know that he had that fight with John Jones where many people believe that he beat John Jones, including Dana White. Dana White doesn't like to say that. But you look at who he lost to. He lost to Yuri Prohaska, former champion. He lost to uh, Jan Blachowicz, who became champion. He lost to who was after? Because I know it's Jan, Yuri. What is it? I forgot who it was. But this would be good for him to get back on a win streak, get back to the top 10. Krylov is ranked 9. And maybe he can go on a run and avenge some of those losses that he took after the John Jones fight. He's looked really good in his last two fights, winning both by finish. So we'll see, man. I wasn't a big fan of Dominic Reyes when he was fighting John Jones, but I can't lie, I'm kind of rooting for him. I kind of want to see him pull this off and make it back to the top of light heavyweight. I think light heavyweight is more interesting with Dominic Reyes. But yeah, moving on to Julian Erosa. He's on a 2 fight win streak. His last 4 fights have ended in the first round, which you can either look at that as a good thing or a bad thing. And he has good wins over current fighters. Sean Woodson, he beat Nate Landwehr. I rate that win highly. And Charles Jourdain, another really good win. And those were all by finish. Julian Erosa is a veteran. He's probably on his last run. And a bit like Dominic Reyes putting together one last win streak here. Um, to go out on maybe some extra money, collect those fight bonuses. I doubt Julian Rosa makes it to like the top of the division, but maybe he sneaks into the top 15. Maybe he gets a fight against a big opponent. Um, but yeah, we'll have to see how Julian Rosa is in this fight. Moving on to the other fighter, Sean Woodson. Now, Sean Woodson is really big for featherweight. His only loss in the UFC is to Julian Rosa. He did have a draw, and then he is a really good striker. They call him the sniper. He's really good at range. He has decent power, and I believe Sean Woodson could be a difficult matchup for most of the people in featherweight. I do wonder how he does against a high level grappler. We will have to wait to see that. But I do think that Sean Woodson is a really fun featherweight. Mainly the size of the dude, man. It's just hilarious to watch a guy with, that much of a height advantage fighting these guys who are like 5'8", 5'9". But I do believe that Sean Woodson can be a guy that can deliver a lot of fun fights. I know some people find him boring. I think that he has a lot of talent, and I think he could be a name in the featherweight division for the next few years. Moving on to Danny Day, who um what can you say about Danny Day, man? Danny Day, he's a fan favorite. Everybody loves him. He's been in a lot of tough fights, never has been finished, and he can hang with the top contenders. He went to do a decision at UFC Noche with Diego Lopez, who potentially could now be the champion of the featherweight division, giving him kind of an in. If it goes on a little run here, he can beat some of the top contenders. Maybe he makes it to a rematch with Diego Lopez. I think it'd be really hard. I think that um, fights like Mobstar, Emmett, or Ron Murphy could be difficult for him. Oh no, he already fought with Ron Murphy. What am I saying? Didn't he fight Josh Emmett too? Anyways, he got my point. If he manages to make it further up the rankings, I believe there's a lot of tough fight for him, but I also think he can hang around with most of them. So for Danny Day with a win here, I don't really know. Danny Gate, he's like I said, he's a fan favorite. He's going to be in a banger fight no matter what. It just do we see him being more than a top 15 fighter? Can we see him break into the top 10, top 8, top 5? That's kind of what I want to see. And as much as I love Danny Gay, I kind of don't see with how good this division is about to get. But moving on to the man coming in to the featherweight division, the greatest Bellator fighter of all time, Patricio Pitbull, making his UFC debut. Um, is um, this is this is difficult, right? Because you hear the name Pitbull and you think of all the great things he did in Bellator. You think of all the names that he beat in Bellator, and then you realize he's 38. He's the first of many fighters to sign from the PFL implosion too. We signed Aaron Pico into the UFC. I think Aaron Pico is gonna be a one hell of a fight for basically everybody on the roster. Aaron Pico is a beast, dude. The question is, though, can he make a title run? I believe if he beats Yair Rodriguez, he can be a top contender in this division. I don't know if he gets a title fight in the second fight in the UFC. Maybe if it's some kind of flash knockout, they would do the Diego fight then. But you gotta think you got others that are featherweight. You got Movsar Evloev who has a win over Diego Lopez, right? But we'll have to see. Pitbull, I would say Patricio Pitbull is probably like the third biggest um thing on this card. It's just a shame we didn't get him in his prime, man. I think prime Pitbull, especially a few years ago when we had Volk, we had Max running that division. I think Pitbull would have been one hell of a fighter to have in the UFC at that time. Moving on to his opponent, Yair Rodriguez, who has been a top featherweight for years. He has been in there with Max. He's been in there with Volk. Emmett. He's fought for the interim title. He's done all this. He started beef with Diego Lopez too recently, basically claiming Diego Lopez is not Mexican, he's Brazilian, and he's calling for his title shot at UFC Noche, UFC 320. Now, I would say he's nowhere near a title shot, but the UFC just loves putting him in title eliminators. Like Death, Taxes, and Yair Rodriguez fighting for a chance at a belt. Those are your guarantees. But I do believe a win over Patricio Pitbull would be massive for him. He'd be beating once again the greatest Bellator fighter we have ever seen. And depending on how he does, like maybe Jair can go on a run. I think when Max and Wolf are fished way out of the division, I know that Max is, but like once Wolf leaves, I could see the featherweight division kind of being like light heavyweight when John Jones retired, where it's just an absolute shit show until somebody who's dominant enough to hold that belt holds it. But for Yair, man, he wants to make it to the title. He's been so close. The UFC has given him a lot of shots, though. That's what I don't get. I wouldn't give him a title shot off of a win against Pitbull. I'd give him a title eliminator once again. But we'll see, man. This new beef with Diego Lopez, it's perfect for UFC Noche. Yair Rodriguez, a Mexican fighter. Diego Lopez is Brazilian but has ties to Mexico. But yeah, a lot of eyes on this fight, mainly for Pitbull. But after that press conference, you gotta be thinking that, a lot of eyes will be on Yair if he wins. Then we move to Michael Chandler, 23-9. What do you say about Michael Chandler? He always has fight of the year level fights. Win or lose, it will be a banger. And he's fought every top contender apart from Arman and Islam Makhachev. But he's 2-4 in the UFC, right? He beat Dan Harker. He lost to Oliveira. After nearly finishing Oliveira, I might add, in that first round, you add maybe 10 more seconds on that clock. I think he does it. Then he fought, was the Dustin Poirier fight? Yeah, I think it was Dustin Poirier after that. He submitted him. Then he fought Gaethje for, wasn't that the BMF belt? Yeah. He fought Gaethje for the BMF belt at MSG. Lost that by decision. And then we know he chased the Conor fight for 2 years. Didn't get it. Wasted 2 years. I believe it was the last 2 years of Michael Chandler's prime. Wasted that waiting for the Conor fight. Came back against Oliveira, which if he would have beaten Oliveira, he probably would have been the number one contender. But again, coming off of a layoff after waiting so long for Conor, Michael Chandler missed out on a lot of fights, a lot of money, and like I say, man, activity can make or break a fighter. And I have my questions about him being a smart fighter. I mean, we know he's entertaining, but he always misses, the little things that can help him win these fights. He throws caution to the wall, which I know we love to see, but at the cost of winning these fights. Michael Chandler absolutely could be a UFC champion. I do believe it. But it's just throwing caution to win. I know that's, him being a showman. That's him being the most entertaining fighter. But at the cost of, not getting to the belt and losing your shot at getting the belt, it's not good, man. You're 2-4. He really needs this win. I believe he needs to beat Paddy Pimblett way more than Paddy Pimblett needs to beat him. If Paddy loses this fight, I think Paddy rebounds. But for Michael Chandler, this might be the end of Chandler in the UFC. You never know. Moving over to Paddy Pimblett, speaking of the devil, this is a big step up in competition for him. I believe his last win was against Bobby Green by submission. He has a chance to beat a former title challenger, as I mentioned. You know, like I said, Michael Chandler very close to being the champion. He would have gotten decimated by Israel Makachev though. And then I think finishing Michael Chandler either by TKO or by submission makes him a legitimate contender in the lightweight division. We know that he had a little back and forth with Ilya Topuria, but they seem buddy buddy. They first bumped at one of the press conferences. Um, but like I really think that Paddy Pimblett, he's already a star. He has a lot of fans behind him. Having him be a top guy and facing Armand Sarukian, Charles Oliveira, and whoever comes in to the top five positions after these guys phase out like Gaethje and Poirier, Paddy Pimblett will be probably one of, if not the biggest things they have at lightweight for the next 10 to 15 years. So a win over Michael Chandler would further propel that and put the UFC in a position where they could potentially get him into a title eliminator, maybe against Justin Gaethje, Dan Harker. We'll have to see. Next, we move on to the main event, and I'm saving the best for last. So that's what we're doing here. I do not forget the Pico's main event, as I called it. Diego Lopez, 5-2 in the UFC when you include the Dana White Contender Series. 5 fight win streak though, 3 by first round finish. He could have a decent run in his team. He has power. He has grappling ability. He can finish you on the ground. And I believe that this what he's shown in his fights, he is one of the most entertaining fighters we have. His fight against Danny Gay last year at UFC Noche was probably the best fight on that card by far. And then you gotta think in the back of your head, Mofsar Evloev, who has been rumored to be fighting Aaron Pico, who just signed from the PFL. You gotta think they do that rematch after this. I don't know who gets the title shot at featherweight though, because Yair wants it. You have that feud building up between him and Yair after Yair called him a fake Mexican. Um, I mean, it's interesting, man. Elite Victoria leaving the division without fighting Diego Lopez really makes a lot of questions there. I think that Victoria probably would have beaten Diego Lopez and probably still could. I mean, yeah, you still can. But it'll be interesting. Diego Lopez, if he beats Alexander Volkanovski, he beats the greatest featherweight, and he starts his run off of that name. Who does he fight though? We'll have to see. But for Diego Lopez, there's pressure on him, but I don't think it's more pressure than Volkanovski. Alexander Volkanovski coming off the knockout losses. The first one is Islam Makhachev in his second attempt to win the lightweight belt. The next one against Ilya Topuria where he lost the featherweight belt. Both of them were brutal. He was knocked out cold. Reclaiming the belt to solidify he is the 145 goal. I think if Elliot Topuria would have stayed in the featherweight division for even 2 title defenses, he beat Diego Lopez, and I don't really know who he'd fight after that, but it would have added to his legacy, and then it would have made it so he would be fighting Islam guaranteed in his first fight. And Alexander Volkanovski can do something that only really GSP and Amanda Nunes have ever done and retire on top as champion. I know he wants one more fight after this, but we'll see. Like everyone though, I'm a big Volkanovski fan. If he gets knocked out again in this fight, it will genuinely put me into a depression. But like, this is Volkman. All eyes are on Alex the Great. Wow, almost. Because we have the People's main event. I do think Volk can win this fight, though I do think he will win. And then, if he does beat Evloev, it would take a lot for anybody to become the featherweight GOAT. Unless, I don't know, Tafoya drops down again, wins back the belt, and defends it. I don't see that happening. But then we get to the People's main event. The real headline of this show, John Silva, who had one of the most ruthless press conferences ever against Bryce Mitchell. That first press conference, he was lethal. And he backs it up in the cage too. He's in demolishing his opponents, knocking out everybody. And he could be on his way to the belt. Part of the fighting nerds. He gets, attention from that. But John Silva, dude, is an animal. What he has shown in the UFC already this way on, This guy is a problem for everybody. This guy has the touch of death. It's scary to see what he's doing to these guys, and he proved instantly that he belongs against tough competition, which he is going up against tough competition. The main reason we're all here, ladies and gentlemen, Bryce Mitchell, host of Arkansas Sanity, definitely didn't say anything controversial on his podcast. Definitely didn't have the media going after him for it, and definitely didn't stand his ground like a absolute G today during media day. But the entire media is after him. Like, it's the journalists. I think it's even, ESPN themselves. Obviously, if Bryce Mitchell wins, there's gonna be those stupid headlines. Oh, controversial fighter. Which, I wouldn't necessarily start off episode one of my podcast bringing out Papa H. That's a strong way to start off a podcast, but in this day and age, we know sensitivity is a thing, and I mean, you picked the big one. You picked straight out the center of the heart, man. The big H, and you know, I, I I'm too scared to even say the word, dude. That demographic, that demographic, that sounds awful, right? Yeah, I'm not trying to get a Bryce Mitchell down here, but Bryce Mitchell was actually a really tough fight for most of the division. He's a really good grappler, high level jiu-jitsu. He has power. He knocked out Kron Gracie, and his only losses in the UFC are to Ilya Topuria and the infamous Josh Emmett knockout. Not not bad losses to have in the UFC. Bryce Mitchell very well could be a top contender the same way John Silva can be. He can be a guy that's around the top five for the next 2 years. But you know, I I want to make jokes here, but I just say I really don't know what I can say. Like, you know, I hope that I really hope that Mitch wins. I picked John Silva to win, but like for the sake of Bryce Mitchell, dude, for the sake of what legacy he has now, I hope he wins. I hope he rebounds. He 10-7 the MMA media today. And I mean, maybe if he wins, we get episode 2 of our Sanity. What does he talk about this time? Hopefully not World War II. But those were just a few of the headlines going in to this freaking script card that I wanted to go over. And honestly, dude, Bryce Mitchell could become champion in featherweight. That's a funny part. I could genuinely see Bryce Mitchell becoming a champion in this division, and I'm not just saying that for the meme. I genuinely think with everything around the guy when it comes to his talent, he genuinely could win a title in this division. But those were just a couple of the headlines going into this weekend that I wanted to go over. Let me know in the comments down below. What are your opinions on these headlines? What are the other headlines relating into this weekend that you are looking at? And man, we finally got a good card. That's what I'm thankful of. We finally have a card where we have meaningful matchups that will affect most of the divisions for the next little bit to come. But let me know what you think. And yeah, later.